Faytene's going to share, and then we'll have Stockwell Day share it with some comments. What I'd like to do also is bring to your attention that at the near the end of the presentation, we're going to be looking to the chat box on the side. If you click on chat on the bottom, a chat box will pop on the side of the screen, and you will be able to enter questions that you have in the chat box. And I will be looking in that chat box for those questions. If you wanted addressed to Faytene or Stockwell Day or anyone else that's spoken, we can get those questions answered for you at the end. So be thinking about those questions during the presentations. And we should have a really, through the whole thing, we should be in and out of here in about 50 minutes to 1 hour maximum. All right, Faytene, take it away.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Doug. And thank you to everybody who's taken time on a Sunday night. We trust you all had an amazing Sunday morning service this morning, that you're feeling refreshed. And you're going to want to put your screen into speaker view, because I'm about to show you guys some slides and a video. And so in order to see things clearly, you are going to want to do that. And so I've already shared my screen here. I'm going to dive right into this. Of course, we all know that we are at a major defining moment in the nation of Canada right now with this current federal election. And I've kind of jump-started myself here, but I want to start by actually recapping with where we've been in the last 4 years. What happened exactly 4 years ago? What's happened since? And then we're going to talk about what's at stake, highlighting two things in particular: the national unity issue and also the charitable status issue for churches and ministries across Canada. These aren't the only things that are at stake, but they are two things that we really want to highlight. And then we're going to talk about what we can do if we really want to make an impact for the sake of future generations. And this call is being hosted by For My Canada. I want to say that as well right out of the gate. So right here, you'll see the first screen slide, the union that changed everything. So in the way of reminding us, it was in 2021 that this happened, where the NDP and the Liberal Party in 2021 both brought home enough seats in that election to be able to merge together to create a functional majority for the Liberal Party and the NDP. Of course, this has been the Liberal NDP coalition that we've all been under the governance of for the last 4-ish years. Now, combined together, the Liberals and the NDPs brought home 187 seats. So in 2021, just to remind us, it really came down to about 20 ridings. And in those 20 ridings, I'm actually going to jump ahead here. Those 20 ridings can be broken down right here by this chart. One of the ridings was won and or lost by only 12 votes, believe it or not. If you add up all of those ridings together in terms of the margin of difference between the winner and the loser, all of the votes together amounted to just 21,900 votes. And so what this means practically, mathematically, in terms of politics, it means that 21,900 Canadians in what are called swing ridings determined for the entire nation of Canada, 44-ish million of us, that this would be our political reality for the last 4 years. And so just want to remind us some of the things that have happened in the last 4 years. Doubling of the federal debt. Some of you might not know this, but right now 100% of all federal sales tax collected goes to interest on the debt. As of 2024, not a dollar that we pay to federal sales tax goes to paying down the debt. It's all going to interest. The average Canadian owes $50,000 to $60,000 in public debt when you combine federal and provincial, so depending on the province that you live in. And all of this means a trickle-down impact of higher taxes for Canadians over time. Another thing that happened in the last 4 years was MAID for the non-terminal has been legalized. Of course, when it was first legalized at the beginning, we were told that it was only going to be for those who were terminal and that would die in the foreseeable future. But we are now on track for medical assistance in dying to be available to the mentally vulnerable by 2027, same day request and administration. Another thing that has happened in the last 4 years, obviously, we know that there have been historic charter rights suspensions that happened during COVID. Refusal to shut down Pornhub. Some of you might not realize this, but Canada is one of the largest distributors of child porn and pornography in general internationally. Pornhub, which functions out of Montreal, was caught basically platforming child porn and non-consensual porn, and yet they still have not been shut down by our government. Passing of unprecedented censorship laws, the anti-pipeline bills, and these bills have really dealt a blow to the economy of our Western provinces. And probably the most notable for the faith community is the criminalization of the Bible, which basically took effect with the passing of the conversion therapy law, where now pastors, counselors, individuals who pray for people who have same-sex attraction, if the full, power of the law was applied, which it has not been at this point, people could possibly go to jail for a few years by teaching biblical sexuality. And so we asked the question, what would it have taken to break up this political union that allowed for a lot of these things to be advanced without resistance in the Parliament of Canada? Well, it would have taken shifting those 20 ridings and shifting those 21,900 votes. Well, mathematically, this is how it breaks down. If we would have had just 438 more volunteers, and by we, I mean Canadians, if there would have been just 438 more volunteers located in key swing ridings, it would have shifted those 21,900 votes. This is because one person volunteering once a week for about 3 hours over the duration of a campaign would have brought in those amount of votes. So these are very, very small numbers. I know we've got a lot of leaders and influencers, movers and shakers on the line. And, many of us on this line have hosted conferences and events that have been much larger than 438 people. And so these are very, very small numbers that would have had a very, very massive impact. What precipitated this call and this gathering together of leaders and those within our sphere of influence tonight, though, was really what we perceived as being at stake in this federal election. Now, I want to pivot and play for you in the next 9 minutes a video, which is unpacking the national unity piece that our nation is facing right now. And the reason we wanted to actually show this video today is because we want you to be aware of the resources that we're putting out so that you can possibly utilize these resources if you feel so inclined. And so on that note, I'm just going to hit play. What if I told you that what will happen between right now and April 28th in Canada will most likely determine the economic state of your province, your pension, whether or not Canada remains a nation as it is right now? Please stick with me for the next few minutes so that I can unpack this and explain exactly what I'm getting at. As we all know, Canada is in a federal election, and Canadians will go to the polls on April the 28th to decide who the next Prime Minister of Canada is and who our federal government will be. In every election, there is something that is at stake, and sometimes the stakes are higher, sometimes the stakes are lower. But what's at stake this time? Well, this tweet right here says it all. On March 20th, 2025, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith explained that she had just met with Prime Minister Mark Carney, and in that meeting, she provided a specific list of demands that the next Prime Minister of Canada, regardless of who that is, must address within the first 6 months of their term in order to avoid an unprecedented national unity crisis. Translation: Alberta is likely closer to separation than at any point in our national history, or at least very close to pursuing sovereignty, very similar to what Quebec accomplished in 2006. In a moment, I'm going to explain clearly why this could deal a devastating economic blow to the rest of Canada. And that blow could send almost every other province into escalated economic hardship. So please stick with me. But first, let's look at exactly where things currently stand politically in this federal election. To get a majority government in Parliament, a party needs to win a minimum of 170 seats all across Canada. On January 5th, when Justin Trudeau was still Canada's Prime Minister, the Conservative Party of Canada, at that point, if an election was called, would win a supermajority with 236 seats, followed by the Bloc with 45, the Liberals with 35 seats, the NDP with 25, and the Green with 2 seats at that time. Well, fast forward to March 23rd, 2025, with Mark Carney now leading the Liberal Party of Canada, there had been a 100-seat shift. The Liberals surged to a projected 178 seats. That's a majority Liberal government. The Conservatives dropped to 131 seats. This very well could be the most dramatic political shift in a 2 to 3 month period in Canadian history. The most recent poll shows the Liberals at 190 seats and the Conservatives at 125. Do you notice something right here? There's a clear political divide starting at the border of Saskatchewan and Manitoba. You can literally draw a political dividing line down the center of our nation right now. What's eye-opening is that this is also the line of division when it comes to equalization payments federally. Check out this chart. It shows equalization payments for 2024-25. Every Canadian east of this line benefits from these payments. Everyone in the west, well, they don't. New Brunswick, for example, received nearly $3 billion in equalization payments in the 2024-2025 budget. And that's nearly 1/4 of New Brunswick's entire provincial budget during that time. The same can be said for many eastern provinces. According to the Fraser Institute, in 2022 alone, Alberta contributed $14.2 billion more to federal revenues than it received in federal transfer payments. In other words, Alberta is a major contributor, not a recipient. And this despite the fact that, as Premier Smith alluded to in her tweet, federal policies have actively targeted and harmed Alberta's economy. Perhaps the greatest tragedy in all of this is that many of us in the East have no idea about what I have just mapped out. But Albertans know, and they are at a breaking point after nearly a decade of feeling economically abused. To bottom line this, many in Alberta just can't and won't take it anymore. If Canadians elect yet another federal government that refuses to respect Alberta, like a spouse in an abusive marriage, Alberta will likely move swiftly towards sovereignty in order to protect itself and its children, taking its strong economy with it. And here's one more critical point. Look at this. This is a graph of the Canada Pension Plan. See who pays and see who receives. Alberta pays $53.6 billion, which helps fund the pensions of Canadians in nearly every other eastern province, with, of course, the exception of Quebec, which, as a sovereign nation since 2006 within Canada, manages its own pension plan. If Alberta moves towards sovereignty, as Quebec did in 2006, it will no longer contribute to the CPP, and this could very well throw Eastern Canada into economic hardship. The question is, do we care? Of course we do. And that means that we must elect a government with a proven track record of respecting Albertans. The divide is abundantly clear, and our national unity and national economy is truly at stake. This is one of the most consequential elections in our history, and the campaign is already flying by. So here are 2 simple action steps that we all need to take right away. Number 1, share this video with your friends and with your like-minded loved ones. Ask them to watch it all the way through. Too much is at stake for the information that I shared in this video to evade the awareness of Canadians and remain hidden. Number 2, don't just vote, though of course that's important, and don't just pray, though of course that is also important. This time, we need you to volunteer. This election will come down to 35 to 50 key swing ridings, and in many of these, the winner will win and the loser will lose by fewer than 1,000 votes. A dozen volunteers in each of these ridings between now and April the 28th could make all of the difference. I know this personally. When I ran for MLA in New Brunswick just last year, I lost by only 224 votes. Premier Blaine Higgs, one of our nation's finest fiscal managers of a province, lost by 183 votes. One volunteer in either one of our campaigns would have put us over the victory line. Your presence matters, and every day of a campaign also matters. If it's down to 35 to 50 ridings, which it is, and if only a dozen people in each of those ridings can change the outcome, and they will, what that means mathematically is that less than 600 Canadians volunteering could determine the future of our nation, national unity, pensions, the economy of smaller provinces in particular, and more. It's all on the line this time. But we can make a difference for our nation and for our future, but we do have to get up off the couch. Your presence is very, very powerful. If you need help identifying a campaign near you that's in a swing riding that needs support, simply visit formycanada.com and sign up to volunteer. A coordinator will connect with you. They will help you to get plugged into a campaign that reflects our faith, family, life, and national unity values, a campaign that will respect Albertans. Thank you for taking this seriously. The nation goes to those who show up in moments that matter, and this is definitely another one of those moments. So go to formycanada.com to sign up to volunteer, to donate to help us make more of these videos, or to stay connected with us. Thank you so much for watching. Okay, well, there you have it. That truly is what we believe is one of the most important things at stake in this election. So we just posted this video today on YouTube. I know some of you have already watched it. It's also on Facebook if you feel so inclined to share it. The second thing we want to talk about real quick, and then I'm going to get Stockwell Day up here. I see him there, and I think we're trying to figure out his camera situation. But the charitable status piece, many of you probably have already seen this. And this was a newsletter that was sent out by Crossroads Communication Center, in which it was titled, "Federal Election Could Decide the Future of Christian Charities Like Crossroads in Canada." Now, what were they referring to? Well, they were referring to something that happened this past December, when the Standing Committee on Finance released Report 21, and in this report, buried in the 300-page report, were two recommendations, and one of these recommendations was a recommendation to amend the Income Tax Act to provide a definition of charity that would remove the privileged status of advancement of religion as a charitable purpose. Now, the nature of legislation, this happened with the redefinition of marriage quite some time ago. It happened with marijuana. It happened with medical assistance in dying, where what you will often see happen is these things are gently introduced, and they continue to be introduced until finally they are picked up into a legislative mandate and passed into law. This is basically what has been our national experience when it comes to these types of things. Now, I've heard some people say, like, listen, this is just one recommendation out of hundreds of recommendations in this Finance Committee report. And true that. And some people have also said that, revoking charitable status for the purpose of advancing religion, that will never happen, because that will not only create an outcry from the Christian community, but also the Muslim community, the Jewish community. And you might be onto something there when you say that. But I will say this, we do have tangible evidence that Christian charities across Canada and pro-life charities are already being actively targeted. I have right here This is a package that our charity received just within the last couple of weeks that has gotten us locked up with lawyers as we've had to answer a whole slew of questions from the CRA. There's no doubt that, let me just put it this way. We are not the only charity that has received this package. And we know that this is a very tangible move that is happening right now already. One other thing that was interesting in this email from Crossroads is they pointed out that out of the 30,000 charities in Canada, about 42% of charities are actually in the faith-based sector. So if this legislation is passed, it will deal a massive blow to the service sector in our nation. A recent survey by Cardis through the Halo Project actually showed that for every $1 that's donated to a church, another I believe it was $3.49 goes back into Canadian society as a value. So this would be a major blow, not only to churches and Christian ministries, but also to society in general. And so on that note, I actually want to see if we can bring up Stockwell Day. And he's going to weigh in with some thoughts here in terms of what he believes is at stake in this election. And then we're going to talk once again about what we can do practically and open it up for questions and answers. Hi, Stock. Great to see you.
Hi, great to see you too, and great to be online with so many of your key supporters and viewers. Um, I just can't emphasize enough to those of you who are online, either listening or watching or both, what Faytene has been saying. And first of all, I just want to acknowledge I've worked a ton of elections in my life, some of my own and many others. I can't think, Faytene, of a time where I have seen somebody so mercilessly, I guess I'll use the word, attacked by media as mainstream media as you were in your provincial campaign. I've simply never seen anything like it. I like to moan and say, woe is me about what I've gone through over the years, but that was something phenomenal. And thank you for standing up. Thank you for making such a strong voice as you always do. And it sort of ties in with what you've just been saying on the items that you've raised. I can tell you, having been finance minister in Alberta and having served there as an NLA for a number of years, we are really seeing the spike, we'll call it that, grow, the movement towards having a referendum, exactly for the reasons that Faytene has said, and that would be effectively an end to Canada as we know it. So it is so important that you or people that you know can get out, go on that link that Faytene mentioned, find out the nearest constituency near to you, and put in some time volunteering. It makes a difference. The number of people that you can get to a door with the right information, you can almost mathematically predict it, as Faytene has done. Please do that. And another quite a simple thing to do on this issue of the tax revocation. Some people, I've even talked to some pastors who say, well, I guess if we lose our ability to give receipts, then so be it. We'll just continue on. It's not that simple. The record is clear in Canada. If your tax status is taken away, one of the things that happens if you're a religious organization, you have to dispense with all of your assets within 1 year. You've got 12 months. And your assets then, it'll be determined by the government, will either go to a registered charitable organization, another one, not yours. Or if you're not willing to do that, then you, at the end of 1 year, you will be subject to a 100% revocation tax. That has happened in Canada. It's happened in a couple places to churches. Happened just last year to the Jewish National Fund, which raises over $30 million a year. And they were subject to, and they lost their status and appealed and lost. So these things are very real. Responding on these can actually turn the tide of the election. Don't let the polling numbers throw you. We've seen how polling numbers can be all awry. We know the fact that many people, just especially conservative leaning, don't answer and don't respond to the polls. This is a lot closer than you think. I just heard from friends on the island, on Vancouver Island, where once again, Pierre, as he's doing across the country, had a gigantic rally there. I think there's 5,000 or 6,000 people. So this is really an important time. And one thing you can do on this tax item while you're looking and seeing where can I volunteer and go and, spend a few hours. If you want to spend a few minutes, I mean that quite literally, and just look up the phone number or the email of your local MP, whoever, whichever party, it doesn't matter. Simply leave them a phone message or send them an email and just ask this simple question: is your party planning to act on the recommendation of the Federal Finance Committee and take away charitable status? That's all you have to ask. And just say, please get back to me right away. Because those kind of messages coming from local constituents and what we call it in politics on the ground, those are reported up the line quietly within the ranks of parties. They go right to the leadership. And when people see and hear at a caucus level what's happening on the ground and the questions that are being asked, it can radically change what they're planning to do. Very significant that Mark Carney and the Liberals have not at all indicated that they're not going to act on this recommendation to take away or take away charitable status. If you wait until legislation happens to take it away, it's too late. Very difficult to turn back legislation. So on these two items, I just can't say enough. Alberta is at a tipping point or approaching one, as Faytene said, and getting out, volunteering, getting people to vote for the Conservatives, very important on this issue, and also on the issue on charitable status. This was brought forward by it shows how a small group can be affected. Little tiny group called the BC Humanist Association. That's the group that brought the recommendation forward to the Finance Committee. Small group, no fanfare. Almost got it across the line if it had come to a vote. So please respond on those two items and make Canada a better place. I believe we can do this. Faytene, thanks again for leading this.
Oh, thank you so much, Stockwell. And if the tech team could maybe just bring me and Stockwell up here together. In a moment, Doug is going to be fielding some questions. And so if you have a question for myself or the amazing, legendary Stockwell Day, this is your opportunity. So put it in there in the chat. And before we dive into that, I just do want to bring my slides up and just share a couple more things on the what can we do factor. This is where we're at today. Okay, today's March 30th. This is the most recent poll. I'm not going to get into commentary. You guys all can see what's happening here. This basically validates that this election definitely is coming down to those 35 to 50 swing riding seats. And so once again, in a lot of these swing ridings, or some of these swing ridings, it will come down to less than 1,000 votes. In those particular ridings, it will be one or two, half a dozen volunteers that will make the difference. And so, vote, definitely. Make your voice heard, definitely. Pray, definitely. But, if Jesus would have stopped to the place of prayer and not gone up and gone to the public square, we would have no way of salvation, right? Like, he went to the cross, he was in the public square, brutalized, beaten, bloodied. Prayer and action is the fullness of the model for our faith, right? And so on that note, though, we are going to have a prayer meeting on April the 17th. We will be doing an online, probably about a 6-hour prayer call. You're all welcome to join in on that. We'll be sending out the information. But we really want to emphasize this action piece. And so want to encourage each one of you on the line. There's about 225 of us, I think, on the call right now. If every single one of us simply recruited 2 more people, and if we went ourselves and worked in a swing riding, we would hit that 600 volunteer point, which could be the tipping point for these 35 to 50 swing ridings. So that's how powerful this call is here tonight. But I want to encourage us not just to take this information as interesting or alarming or whatever we might take it to be, but to actually take it, ingest it, and convert into action. And so formycanada.com, that's the place where you can go to sign up to be a volunteer. You will be assigned into a swing riding that represents our faith values, whether that's a pro-family, pro-life, pro-freedom, pro-respect Alberta candidates. There is no perfect candidate, but we're trying to drive into those ones that most reflect our views and values. And so when you sign up to volunteer, you will be connected practically, and you're all leaders on this line. You're all influencers. And so I want to encourage you to seriously consider whether or not we are at a hinge of history moment. I felt deeply gripped that I needed to bring this information to you. And now it's in your hands to discern before the Lord whether or not He would have you bring it to those that you influence. And so, again, go to formycanada.com to do that. Okay, so on that note, we're going to bring Doug back on up. I'm not sure if Roy Byer is here or not. He brought some incredible commentary on our Thursday call, but I did hear from Roy that he's actually signed up into a campaign and has been door knocking every night this week, Doug. So that's probably where he's at right now. Doug, we'll leave it to you now to close this up and field some Q&A, unless Stock has something there.
Stock, do you have anything you want to share here?
As usual, Faytene has covered the ground very well, so fire away, Doug.
Awesome. Okay. Well, hey, Faytene, I just want a couple of comments about what you'd shared. I've worked a few elections over the course of the last 20 years here in Canada. I'm so glad that you're bringing forward the numbers and the closeness and how tight some of these margins are in the swing ridings. And the reason for me that I feel it's so important for us here on the call to note that is because one thing I hear almost every election is people are being brought to a place of believing that their engagement or level of engagement cannot make a difference. And it comes from the natural realm, all like it does. Definitely. It's a tool, a political tool that's used against us. However, I think there's a supernatural reality here that we have to face, is that the enemy does not want us to believe that we can make a difference. But the fact of the matter is that it's proven up over and over and over again that one person can make a massive difference. So thank you for drawing that attention to us in great detail. Also, the fact that you have made this so convenient and easy for us to engage with. All someone has to do on this call tonight is have the question arise in them that, what can I do? Like, what can I do? And then you open up this portal where they can get in touch with you and you will answer that question for them. So you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be, I don't, all the questions that come, do I even know how to door knock or make a phone call, or, how does this work? All of those questions, Faytene has set up this system, this structure, so that all you have to do is be willing to walk through the door. And I think everyone on the call here tonight will be able to attest to the fact that that's a pretty big thing. That gets everything moving sometimes. It's just being able to walk through into the conversation that's taken place. So thank you, Faytene, for that. We've got some great questions in the chat here I wanted to bring to you guys. First of all, one of the questions was first off, Stock, if you could just repeat what you said about that one simple question to ask if you call your member of Parliament's office and then you want to have that question about their intentions on charitable status. Could you just repeat that for the folks on the call?
Yeah, happy to do that. It's an action that would probably take you 60 seconds out of your life. Just go online, check the phone number of the office of your MP, regardless of which party, and also the email. If you phone, if nobody's there live, you can always leave a message. They monitor all the messages. And the simple question is this: do you and your party plan to put in place the recommendation from the Financial Committee, Federal Financial Committee, to cancel or take away charitable status of churches? And they'll come back. They might have try and have a question about a specific angle or this and that, and all I have to say is just get back to me and let me know. Because what's going to happen is the fact you ask that question, though you might not think it registers, during an election, when a campaign, and they do this, they monitor their candidates that are out there knocking on doors, and they say, what are you hearing? Anything on the ground? This will come up. You get enough people, and it doesn't have to be tons. It's just as we're hearing from Faytene, doesn't take a lot of door knockers going in an area. Literally a couple of handful of people just making that call or sending that email. Please tell me if your party is planning on putting in place the recommendation of the Federal Finance Committee to take away charitable status of churches. And you might get a big pushback, especially if the liberals say, no, no, we're not going to. Well, just say, we want to hear that. We want to hear an official statement on that.
Awesome. Thanks, Doc. Thank you so much for clarifying. Also, we have a question here about wanting to know, and you answered this, I know, on the last call, Faytene, that people are asking about the list of swing ridings, and you had explained why that was not something that we were provided. Could you explain that for folks on the call tonight?
Yeah, there's two reasons for that. And the first is that it changes. Literally, like I don't if you're watching the polls, it's actually changing almost 10 seats from day to day. And so the ridings that we're focusing on will be determined by where the greatest need is and the words that we're hearing on the ground. The other thing is just because this isn't our first rodeo, right? And we know that once you put a list out there, it can land not only in the hands of those that agree with you, but those that disagree with you as well. And we don't want those that disagree with us getting a hold of that list and then starting to mobilize themselves against great people at the grassroots level. And so this is why we're just asking people to sign up directly, and we will connect with you personally based on your geography. Now, I do want to give you a little hack, though. If you go to the website 338canada.com, I think it's .com, 338canada.com, that will show you basically where all the specific ridings are polling out. You can actually go look at your province. So let's say you're from Ontario, you can look at all the ridings in the Ontario roster, and anyone that doesn't have safe beside it, so whether it's Liberal safe or CPC safe or NDP safe, anyone that says leaning or toss up, that would be a current swing riding. So I know we've got some incredible people of prayer out there that have said, we just want to pray specifically for those swing ridings. So just go to 338canada.com, look for the ones that say leaning or toss up, and those are going to be the current swing ridings.
Okay, fantastic. And I noticed that we've got lots of great help here in the chat. People are dropping links in there. Appreciate that very much. One of the questions has to do with, if you don't mind me sort of using this word, about the noise that's gone on around this election. And again, I'm so glad that you're doing this, Faytene, the way you structured this, you kind of screen out all the noise. But the question was along the lines of whether you or Stock had a comment about why this election, things seem to be changing so much. I mean, that like right from the very beginning, every single day, it seems like there's these massive swings of sentiment and all these different perspectives and a lot of noise out there. Is there something that you can help people understand and maybe about into that noise and maybe how to screen it out?
I nominate Stockwell to answer this question.
Oh, no, not another nomination meeting. I've been to too many. Well, I could tell you we've seen it. It is being categorized as one of the most phenomenal swings in polling data, certainly in recent or not so recent Canadian history. We all know that because of the excellent job here Polyev was doing the last 2 years, town by town, city by city, highways and byways, explaining the program, which most of us like and support. And so he was moving up very well in the polls into a majority position. The introduction of President Trump with the tariff wars has shifted everything. It's been the single greatest factor. It is literally, it's just been like a tsunami going across the country. So that's the factor that has caused things to shift, because the liberals have managed to get this message out that Mark Carney will have the answer to the tariff wars. And that actually, first of all, it's not true, but that's what's caused the swing. You'll see if you want to read an interesting item, and it's just out today or yesterday. Check the National Post, and it's comments by a guy by the name of Norman Spector. I won't go into detail on him. He's very public, but a pretty savvy inside analyst. And he actually thinks, and he presents evidence of this, that President Trump is appearing friendly to Carney because Trump would like Carney elected so that Albertans, among others, would be so furious because they know that would be, Alberta would be like the end of their finances. that they would push this movement to call for a sovereignty association referendum at exactly what Faytene has been talking about and predicting. It adds exactly to what she's been saying. So that's the key. That's been the key, the single greatest factor. There's other things that'll cause for things to swing. Mainstream media rarely will talk about any of the huge concerns that are out there related to Mark Carney. That's why he's called the election so quickly. If he can just survive the increased number of questions that he's getting, then he thinks he could win. So this is rolled out exactly as Faytene predicted. And before the tariff thing, Faytene was on to this issue in terms of what's going to happen in Alberta. So but that's been the reason. It's a bit of a long question, a long response, Doug, to your good question. Single biggest reason for that swing is Liberals have been able to convince people that Carney would be better to deal with Trump, and we are very, very concerned about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree completely with that, Reed. I think Trump, this is just my political opinion. This one will thresh out in time whether or not it was true, but I agree. I think Trump would love to see Albertans moving towards sovereignty because that would make them an incredible ally in terms of all the factors that you talked about, Stockwell. It would, I believe, dramatically change the landscape of our nation quite swiftly. I think that's an accurate read, personally. There might be others on the line that disagree. I'm just telling you what I personally believe. But at the end of all this, how do you still the buzz? Just tell yourself this. There's really one thing that matters right now, and that's volunteering in swing ridings. The Facebook chatter doesn't matter. The Twitter chatter doesn't matter. Even the church foyer chatter doesn't matter. The Tim Hortons chatter doesn't matter. All that matters is who shows up in those swing ridings, because it will be those 600 volunteers that either show up or don't show up that determine the trajectory of our nation. And so I've just been encouraging our team just to keep our focus. You know, the nation goes to those who show up in moments that matter. And this is a moment that matters. So whatever the issue of the day is, the answer is the same, and that's swing ridings.
And that's exactly, again, the focus of the campaign and what Faytene has set up for you. We had one question in the chat here about somebody that was already volunteering in the local campaign office and then said, what else can I do? And again, there's that golden question that you're going to answer, Faytene, and your team is going to answer when you go to For My Canada's website and enter in through the portal. You will be given those other things that you can do. And I got to tell you, give it a try. If everybody on the call did this, imagine just on this call, if you then bring a friend, of course it doubles. And if you then bring it to your church family, you can raise that number again. But you start driving traffic to this portal, and I think you're going to see exactly what the portal's designed to do is people will find out what they can do, and then they'll do it, and then there'll be impact. Really, really important. Now, this one question came up in the chat, if I may, is just a clarification. Is somebody sounds like they might be wanting to tell their pastor or church leader about this stock. If somebody does in fact lose their charitable status within 1 year, what happens to all of their assets? You said that something they get them actually forced to be taken away, or they have to give them to someone else. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it will absolutely happen. It's not just the isolated case that you can't write receipts for people anymore. It's under the Income Tax Act, and mainly spelled out in sections 161 and 181. And it's very clear. Once you lose your status as a charitable organization, you right away, the movement starts that you have to forsake, forego all of your assets. And as you start to do that, there can be some direction, not much, into which organization is going to get it, but it will be an organization which has tax status but is not charitable, because the charitable status will be gone. So this has happened. Apostolic Church of Christ in Toronto, this was a number of years ago, completely lost their status. Now, I'm not arguing their case for them, because CRA said that there were some irregularities or they didn't report correctly. I'm not arguing that, but I am telling you we got to see how the process works. First they lose the status, then they can't give receipts, then actually they lose all their assets. And if you don't, uh, if the assets is not taken away, you don't agree which non-charitable organization is going to just take over your assets, you get hit with a 100% revocation tax based on the value of all your assets, and you have to pay that. So it's obviously devastating. As I said, it also happened to the Jewish National Fund last year, and it has happened to another church called Harvest Church. I'm not arguing their cases. I'm not going to be a tax lawyer on this, but it proves that's the process that unfolds, and it eliminates you.
Yeah, and just to dumb it down too, right, Stock, that means that, okay, let's say a church has $50,000 in the bank account. That $50,000 has to be given away to another qualified donee. Let's say that a church owns a couple $1 million building in the heart of Toronto.
Right.
That building either has to be put into a qualified donee or it has to be sold, and the funds have to be given to a qualified donee. And so it's not like you can just keep going on without, but the only difference is you're not giving tax receipts. No, it's complete liquidation. For most churches, it's going to put them into instant chaos trying to figure out what they're going to do, how they're going to, and when you say the 100% revocation tax, so let's say you have a building that's worth, I don't know, $5 million in Brampton. Okay. Then you either have to find somebody in your church that, or somebody in your footprint that will buy that for $5 million at property value, or you need to liquidate and give that to the Brampton Food Bank or whoever would be considered a qualified donee. And if revocation of charitable status for religion is completely abolished, then that means you are only giving it to educational charities and humanitarian charities who probably have to sign off on some sort of an attestation on ideology by this point with the government. So is that like the bottom line on this one, Stock? Am I getting that right?
You can't hit more of a hard rock bottom than that. That's what it is.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I have another question here, and the question was about contact when they contact For My Canada, enter the portal, get contacted by one of your staff. There are certain things that people feel like they're not able to do, or there are limitations that they've maybe can only use the phone, or they can't necessarily door knock. Or can you give us an example of different ways that people might be interacted with, or what things that you might do to engage with people when they get involved in the process itself, and just give them a sense as to what they might expect when they call For My Canada and get involved?
I'm smiling, Doug, because you're the best one to answer this question. But just to say this, the highest return on investment activity in any campaign is going to be simply going to the doors, introducing yourself, giving them a piece of literature for the candidate that you're working for, and asking them if you can count on their support. You're not getting into debates. You're not getting into policy discussions. You're just trying to find the people that are going to support the candidate so that on election day, you can remind them to get out and vote. Because a lot of times, particularly in these tight races, it's not the person who has the most supporters that wins all the time. It's the one who actually gets their people out to vote, particularly in these tight races. Now, if you don't feel comfortable doing that activity, campaigns will take whatever they can get. If you can make coffee, if you can fold brochures, if you can go put out signs, if you can drive, senior citizens to the election voting polling station, there's lots of things that you can do to actually free up those that are able to go and willing to go to the doors. But those are, the other thing too is there might be somebody on the other side of the nation who really reflects your views and values that's in a real battle. Well, you can also volunteer over the phones, or let's say that physically you can't get out. Or maybe you're a stay-at-home mom and you're like, okay, I can volunteer for an hour when my babies are napping, well, then you can volunteer over the phones. And so whatever your ability is, we will connect you, or not we, the volunteer coordinator will connect you with the campaign closest to you that's in a battle zone, and they will work with you based on your capacity. But number one activity always is those people that are willing to go to the doors and make friends.
Awesome, awesome. And then finally here, probably we just have time for this one more question here, unless there's, yeah, we might have time for two. But finally here we have Just a question of like people are asking about vote splitting. I mean, we're talking about a very specific campaign regarding a, sort of a binary choice between, liberals, conservatives, really. Who would like to comment about the potential of vote splitting in various ridings?
I'm happy to do that, and I'm sure Faytene might have some eyes on that too, just because I've been involved in so many of those campaigns. And it really, what we're talking about, I'm assuming, is another party which also has, some very good principles and very good policies. Um, when Faytene mentioned this earlier too, in an election, by the way, we're not voting for Mr. or Mrs. or Ms. Perfect. We're voting for the party that most closely aligns to the things that matter most to us, and recognizing that no party will ever perfectly align other than the one that Doug Sharp and I will start and launch. That will be the perfect party. By the way, some of you might not know Doug worked for me. He's half the reason I got more than that elected a number of times. But here's the thing. You will, in the so-called swing ridings, they're going to be decided by a handful of votes. And so there's a couple of other parties out there which have some great people, and they're about 2% in the polls, maybe 1% in the polls. What will happen there in ridings that are close between a liberal and a conservative, where literally a handful of votes, 50, 100, 200 votes will make the difference? By having that other third party option, and I said they may be great folks with great policies, but it could help to lose the election for the liberals. So that's why, um, obviously, it's democracy. Feel free to vote as you will. But when I was, I've helped out on these type of writings and gone into writings and asked people not to vote a certain way for a party that looked appealing. But if it's not even registering, all you're going to do is take votes away from the conservative candidate, which could allow a liberal to run up the middle, as they say.
18, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think Stock nailed it. I think at the end of the day, we've all got to go with our conscience. But, I think of Harold Albrecht, right? And was it in Kitchener that a few years ago,
Right.
one of the strongest faith-based members of parliament that we've ever had. He was a huge advocate for combating suicide, and he was just awesome. He led the weekly prayer, Wednesday morning prayer meeting, from what I understand, and he lost by less than 300 votes, and there was an 800 vote split in that riding. We lost one of the best members of parliament in our recent history to a vote split, and so you just got to really weigh that one up. And we're happy to help out if sometimes people want to vote in a certain way just to send a message. You just have to pick that moment wisely. If you are in a riding like Harold Albrecht's, that could be lethal.
Okay, I'm actually not seeing any more questions here. Did I miss anybody? I hope not.
Oh, he lost by 577 votes. I'm sorry, I got fact checked here. Sorry for the fake news there, Trevor. We need our fact checkers, as long as they're nice ones. I like the nice ones.
It just goes to show the audience that we've got as an informed crew. Well, that's just fantastic.
I thought it was less than that, but still, 577 is not a lot.
And there have been writings, as you know, 15 that have lost on fewer votes than that, a fewer spread. Again, we're not voting for perfection. I've already voted for Jesus, and he's not running in this election. He's involved in something far more important. We're just voting or supporting that party which most closely aligns to the interests, the things that matter most to us, and that has a possibility of winning.
Amazing. Well, maybe I'll close on my final statement here with just reminding everybody of the website. Go to formycanada.com. That's your spot. That's your on-ramp right there. Share it with your friends. Anita was saying, what else I can do? Anita, just go share this with your 1,000 best friends tonight, okay? And we will be, for everybody that registered for this call tonight, we are going to be sending out a follow-up. We did record tonight, so if the recording is good and we didn't have any broccoli in our teeth, right, Stockwell, did? we might send out the recording as well. And but we do have that video. Somebody was asking about the prelude. We do have the video about the Alberta separatist sovereignty piece. We've already put that online. I've just filmed another clip about the charitable status aspect, and we'll be putting that online as well. We will do our best to resource you, but you be powerful. You be the voice. Take this information, share it with your friends, share it with your grandma, share it with your auntie, share it with your dog, share it with your goldfish. And we just got to realize we got 30 days. And when these 30 days are gone, it's done. It's over. No, there's no do-over on this. So we really need to step up and step in for the sake of our kids and our churches. Doug, you're amazing.
Hey,
Stockwell.
thanks so much for putting this together, Faytene. Thank you, Stock, for your time tonight.
Thanks, Faytene. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you, everybody, for making time tonight. We love you. God bless you.